I don't care how old you are, man, and you shouldn't. If you're hurting and you know you have to do something about it, then do it. And only you can do it for yourself. I can't get anybody sober.
Don't stress, live life one day at a time. Don't drink or drugging, you'll be fine.
Welcome back to Staying Sober with Papa Joey. I wasn't planning on doing this video. It's pretty late here tonight. But I ended up having a conversation with a gentleman. He sent me an email, said he read my new book, Don't Drink or Use No Matter What, and no matter what means no matter what. And he asked if he could have a phone call with me. He saw one of my videos where I did say that I would talk to people via the phone if necessary. And I think he was trying to call me out on it. But he kind of, I asked him what's going on. And basically, he said he's 60 years old. He's been drinking all his life. And he really wants to stop. However, he just thinks he's too old. And after reading my book, he started thinking, well, maybe I can do this. So anyways, he reached out. And I said, sure, I'll talk to you. So I had a phone call with him. And we probably talked for a good hour. So the deal with this gentleman, and I told him I'd probably do a video on it because it was interesting because it brought me back to when I first got sober. Now, I was only 32 years old, but I had drank for quite a long time, and I drank pretty hard and had some shit in my life, just like a lot of people. So it was my time when it was my time. Okay, I had thought about it in the past. I knew I had a problem with alcohol. Well, I never really didn't have a problem with alcohol. I just had a problem stopping my drinking with alcohol. Alcohol wasn't the problem. I was the problem. And whenever I put it in me, I wanted more and more and more. And then life got out of hand. But anyways, so he said he was 60 years old, just turned 60. He's been through a couple of marriages. Surprise. He's got 2 kids, and the kids still talk to him. However, they been through a lot of stuff with him. And that's not a surprise either. I know a lot of families that had, people who drank or abused drugs, and the kids suffer. I was fortunate. My daughters never saw me drunk. And they were young when I quit, and I stayed sober because I never wanted them to see me drunk. And truthfully, I didn't want to drink anymore. I had enough. I screwed up my life enough because of the alcohol, or because I wanted alcohol. I don't blame alcohol. That was what I chose to do, and I did it, and I don't anymore. But going back to this gentleman, so he said, at 60 years old, do I really have a shot at, stopping, my drinking? He's going to retire, he said, in another year. He does very well for himself, and he's tired of getting into trouble because of his drinking. He's had a couple of arrests, DUIs. Even though he has some money, he's lost quite a bit because of things he did when he, because of his abusing alcohol. So I had to tell him that, in my opinion, it's age really doesn't have anything to do with when you get sober, or if you stay sober when you stop. Okay, it all has to do with when the time comes. Have you had enough? Are you really done, man? I mean, because I know in my case, even though I was only 32 years old, after my last drunk and the shit I put myself through and other people, I was like, you know what? I'm done with this. I just can't see going on another day living this way, or maybe something worse could happen. And I've shared before, my last drunk wasn't really as worse as some of my other drunks, but it just made me stop and think, where I was like, fuck, I can't keep doing this. And I think that's where this gentleman is, because I could tell by his voice that he was hurting, but he was also maybe unsure, like thinking, can I really do this? And I think he reached out to me because he wanted me to tell him, dude, you got to, do this, step 1, step 2, step 3. I don't do that for anybody. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I just tell people how I got sober. And if you watch this channel at all, or if you pick up my book, I clearly state, because it wasn't planned, that I walked into an AA room. That was my first introduction of, getting sober, staying sober, and all that. And so he asked me about it. Now, he did say, because of the couple of DUIs, that he had to go for some counseling. He went into AA, but he said he fought everything all the way. And that happens. Because if you're not ready to get sober, and you don't want to get sober, and you're doing it because you're ordered to, or your wife's going to leave you, your husband's going to leave you, your kids aren't going to talk to you, you're going to lose your job. Well, let me tell you something. That's not going to keep you sober. Right? You may do it to pacify people, but it's not going to keep you sober. You really got to want it. And all the people throughout my years of sobriety that I've talked to that have stayed sober, that, have some time, being sober, that they stayed sober because they really wanted it. They were just tired. They didn't want to live that life. So that's, what I basically had to tell this gentleman. And I also told him, going back to my days when I was in AA, I haven't gone to AA in years, but I remembered a lot, especially after or during writing my book. It brought back a lot of memories of, my time there, and how thankful that I was that I went there and I met the right people, and a lot of people helped me. And some people probably didn't even know they helped me. Just sitting in a room listening to somebody sharing something, and all of a sudden I'm like, damn, I'm going through that. And wow, that's how they handled it. So there's people out there that really don't have a clue that, yeah, they helped me in their own little way. So this gentleman, I explained to him about a woman that I met. I was about a year sober, and she had just came in, and she was 55 years old. And the reason I remember her, because when she started to share in the room, she'd been coming into the meetings, sitting very quietly, and, just say hi to everybody and then sit down. And then after the meeting, she would leave. And that was it. She really wasn't, socializing with anybody. However, one day, she just decided to open up. I don't know what the topic was, but she started talking about what brought her in to AA. And she said, she was 55 years old, and, she had a DUI. She should have had many of them, she said, because she was what was she? Now I'm trying to think. She had an executive type job with a company, and she was always going out. She was married. Her and her husband would go out, and she was very well off. But the drinking got out of hand. She found herself keeping booze in her office. She had a private office, and she would drink, in the morning in her coffee. She'd put a little hit in there, and, and I'm listening to this woman, and I'm thinking, are you kidding me? I would never have pictured this woman with a story like she was telling everybody. And it made me realize, even back then, that everybody has their own story, their own reason why it's over for them as far as the drinking. And I know I don't talk much about drugs, but it is don't drink or use no matter what, and no matter what means no matter what, because there comes a time when you've got to become that person, whereas you're giving up something that you've been doing for a long time, and the only way to be successful at it is to just stop. So when this woman was talking, and she shared, she shared quite a bit, and then what was interesting about it, right after she shared, she became a different person. And what I mean by that is she would get to the AA meetings a little earlier than she used to, and she'd start talking to people. And then after the meeting, she may go to the club that I went to, or the room that I went to. It was like a little clubhouse. There was a room, they had a coffee bar, and they had some chairs and stuff, and people would gather and talk and everything. And she started to hang out, and I started to talk with her. And she was very interesting. Sweet woman, but she was hurting. But time after time, or day after day, she just transformed into this other person. Because when she first came in, you could tell she was maybe a little shaky, and like I said, she didn't talk. Then once she opened up, I just think she felt better about that. And there was a gentleman, an older guy. He had 15 years of sobriety, then decided to go back out for another 10 or 15 years, and then just came back into the rooms of AA about 2 years prior to me. And he was a great guy, a funny guy, but he told a story. He was in the Navy, and he got drunk one day, and he tried to steal a submarine. So that was interesting when I heard that story. And it was true. He did try to do it. He got into a bunch of trouble. But that's what, drinking does to people, and I'm sure drugging does too. Now, going back to this gentleman, is 60 years old too old to quit drinking? Hell no. Because he could have a lot of time ahead of him. And you know what? If he only has 6 months or a year, and I hope he has more. I don't think he's got any health issues. I didn't get into that much with him. He does have some issues he said he's got to deal with. But I think a lot of that is probably because of his drinking, some weight issues and stuff. But he says he's pretty active. But anyways, I told him, find the closest AA room. I don't want to do that. I said, okay, don't do that. And I just asked him why. Well, I'm not the type of person that, wants to, talk about my problems. Well, then don't talk about them. I said, you wanted to talk to me. You don't know me. And you just read my book. But you reached out. And he said, yeah. And I did watch some of your videos. And he said, I just figured, what the hell? I said, okay, well then just figure, what the hell, walk into an AA room. Now, I don't know what kind of people you're going to meet when you walk into an AA room, because every place is different. Everybody's going to be different, but the message is still the same. There's going to be somebody there that really wants to help you and listen to you. And if you don't want to talk to anybody, don't. I've always said to people, just go to an AA room, sit down and shut up. That's it. Can you do that? I mean, if you really want to get sober, then it's going to take a little effort. Reading this book is not going to get you sober. Reading a bunch of other books is not going to get you sober. Okay? Sitting on your ass and going on YouTube and, talking or listening to people who've gotten sober, how they did it and everything. It's going to help you, but you got to make an effort. And to me, if you're capable, now if you've got some physical, problems, then of course that's a good alternative. watching a YouTube video, or they've got different recovery programs online. AA has one. There's a few others, but I really don't go to them. I don't really have a need to. So, but I know they're out there. But if you're capable of walking into an AA room, do it. Just go in there and say you've had enough. Now, I always say I'm not trying to promote AA, and I'm not, but I know what worked for me, and I know what worked for a lot of people that I know. Right? And I know some people who were sober for a while, but they ended up drinking again. Or some of them went to NA and they started using drugs again. And I'm going to tell you something. It has nothing to do with AA, and it had nothing to do with NA. It all had to do with that person. Because every day, no matter how long you're sober, you're going to have to realize that you're a person that for whatever reason shouldn't put alcohol in you or drugs, right? You just have to realize that. And it's okay. There's nothing bad about that. It's not a big deal. I know I made not drinking early on a big deal because I drank so much. I was young. I just went through a divorce, or I was going through a divorce while I was getting sober early on. And I still wanted to go out. I was always in the bars. I was a musician. I liked that atmosphere. So, I couldn't do that for a while. And I was okay with it. And then little by little, I don't recommend it for everybody, but once I found myself understanding why I shouldn't put alcohol in me, I felt comfortable going into bars and, doing my thing or whatever, going out and having some fun, meeting different women and stuff. I was a single guy. I wasn't going to give that up. Back then, I had a lot of hair, too. So it was a lot easier meeting women back then. Anyways, we're not going to talk about my love life. However, at 60 years old, 50 years old, 40 years old, 65, 70 years old, it doesn't matter. What matters the most is if you're done. And after talking with this gentleman, I sat at my kitchen table for a little while, and I was thinking about the call. And it made me realize how thankful I am that I quit when I did. And and writing the book, and I looked in a short period of time. It all came like bang, 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 bang. After this conversation, that's why I'm doing the video now when everything is fresh in my head. Normally, before I do a video, I kind of plan everything out, make notes, just like a guideline, an outline where I can focus on to do my videos. This one, there's no notes or anything. I'm just going off the cuff. But I don't care how old you are, man, and you shouldn't. If you're hurting and you have to do something about it, then do it. And only you can do it for yourself. I can't get anybody sober. And I've shared this before. My daughter died of a drug overdose 5 years ago. If I could have given her my sobriety and take the shit she was going through that, forced her to keep using these drugs time and time again, I would have done it gladly. And then I would have hopefully fought my way out of it. If not, then whatever. I would have done that for my daughter. But I couldn't. Right? And nobody's going to do it for you. There's people there to help you. There's people there that will listen to you. It's up to you, nobody else. And, like I said, you can walk into an AA room. If you don't do that, I spoke to this gentleman about, find a local church. They have, people there that you can talk to, and I'm sure there's some type of program. A lot of the churches have it for, people that have addictions or whatever. Get hooked up with somebody like that. Or, maybe talk to somebody professionally out there. But do it. You keep putting it off. If you keep sitting there at home thinking, yeah, one of these days I'll read another book. Maybe I'll watch another YouTube, video and drinking. And, well, tomorrow I'll do it. I don't know if tomorrow will come. I mean, all the times I got in trouble drinking, and I said to myself, okay, this is it. I'm done. But I went back out there. And with the mindset like, okay, now I know what to do. I'll call for a ride next time I get drunk. That shit never happened. Never happened. I drove, and I'm ashamed to say it, I drove drunk all the time. And totaled 2 cars because of that, DUI, whatever. So, yeah, you don't know if the next day is going to work out for you. And it brought me back to that woman who, 55 years old, she got a DUI. I think she was the year before, so she was a little younger. And even after that, she went through all the bullshit that she had to go through, court ordered, and the embarrassment, and, the family and all that. And she still drank for a while until one day she says, I can't do this anymore. I can't do this. And that's what you have to do. You have to get to the point where you say, I can't do this anymore. And you don't have to have a bottom. There's no age requirement. You can quit anytime you want. This gentleman, just 60 years old, he quit tomorrow. I told him, you can stop tomorrow if you really want to. Yeah, I do. Okay, well, we'll see. And I hope it works out for him. I really do. I'm sure he'll probably reach out, again, maybe, follow up with an email or something. I told him, if you need somebody to talk to again, I'll talk to you, but just don't call me drunk. Just give me a text or an email, but don't call me if you're drunk, because I can't do anything, or it's not gonna work. So, but anyways, at any age you can get sober. And see, this is what happens when I don't have an outline to talk. I just ramble for 25 minutes. Well, anyways, one more time, I want to remind people out there, this book, Don't Drink or Use No Matter What, and No Matter What means no matter what, by yours truly, Papa Joey. You can find it on Amazon. Just walks you through little parts of my life, what I was thinking at that time, and then how I ended up getting sober, staying sober, and all that stuff. And, I'm pretty proud of the book. I never thought I would write it. Finally got it done. But anyways, until the next time, don't drink or use no matter what, and no matter what means no matter what. Thanks for tuning in. Bye-bye.
Think about your serenity. Be grateful for your sobriety. Staying sober with Papa